Tomorrow's Election Day here in New York and across the country. Good evening, I'm Sabrina Majore.
And I'm Connor White. The New York State Board of Elections says over 200,000 people voted early in the program's first year in the state. That includes the 1,000 or so voters that went to the polls on Saturday here in Onondaga County.
Early voting was closed today as polling places prepare for Election Day tomorrow. Several key local seats are up for grabs this year, including the Onondaga County Executive and District Attorney. We go now to Talking Points anchor Jack Watson with a closer look at these races and more. Jack?
That's right, guys. The time has finally come. We are fewer than 24 hours away from local elections, and while there aren't any major federal elections this year, there's some pretty serious local ones. If you haven't voted already, and we'll talk about that later, let's take a look at some of the big ones in our Election Day Eve Voters Guide. I'm just going to step aside here for a quick second. We have an Onondaga County Executive, District Attorney, County Comptroller, and 17 county legislators up for election. And here in Syracuse, in the city, we've got two counselors at large, I should say, and 5 counselors up for election. Now let's take a look at the really big race that everybody is talking about, the Onondaga County Executive race. We've got Ryan McMahon, the Republican. We all know how difficult it is to beat an incumbent, and especially a Republican incumbent in this county, but Democratic challenger Tony Malavenda is looking to do just that. For the Republicans, Ryan McMahon was the chairman of the county legislature who was called up when Joni Mahoney resigned about a year ago to take a job down the street at SUNY ESF. This has been a nasty race. Plenty of name-calling and not much civility to be had. Meanwhile, with a comptroller's race between Marty Masterpole and Matthew Beadnell, it's pretty much the opposite in terms of rhetoric. Both candidates have been respectful to each other, and they've commended each other for that. It'll likely be a pretty close race here. Now, Masterpole has a serious brand recognition as a formal mayoral candidate, but Beadnell is the incumbent. Keep an eye on this one. Meanwhile, here in the city, there are 2 counselor at-large roles that need to be filled. Longtime Syracuse resident Michael Green will look to stay in downtown Syracuse and finally break into the mold.
Jack, a lot to look forward to for tomorrow, but looking back at the past 8 days, this is the first year that we've had early voting in New York. How has that worked out?
Yeah, it's been a little controversial, especially when you consider the fact that there was about a $10-15 million price tag on early voting to get those polls operational. You know, there's an operation cost that goes with this, and conservatives, it's really caught the ire of conservatives, whereas more liberal people would like to say, hey, sometimes people's schedules don't always conform to that first Tuesday in November deadline that you need to vote. It gives people a chance to vote who maybe can't send an absentee ballot but also can't vote on that Tuesday election day.
Now, Jack, several candidates on the ballot, but they're not the only ones on the ballot. There's actually a proposition. So can you talk to us about that?
That's right. Proposition 1, our guest contributor, Jishnu Nair, actually had a really great report on this. But just to reiterate, Proposition 1, it's going to be basically a Democratic mandate. It's in its final stage to redistrict the city of Syracuse. Now, this is based on the most recent census data that's available to the city of Syracuse. The Common Council has really already passed this. This is just the last hurdle this thing needs to pass before we get to what ultimately the Common Council will like to see as a formal redistricting of the city, and the 5 councilors that are up for election on Tuesday would represent those brand new districts.
Now, moving back out of the city and into the county at large, that big race that you were mentioning, do you think that McMahon holds his seat tomorrow?
The Republican Onondaga County Executive has been that way for a very long time. This has been a Republican position basically for the past couple of decades. I really don't see Ryan McMahon losing tomorrow, but 24 hours from now, we could be saying something totally different. Tony Malavenda is a businessman turned politician. This is his first big high-profile race. I'm really not sure he can pull it out against Ryan McMahon tomorrow.
All right, Jack, thank you so much. We'll leave it there. An exciting day for politics coming up tomorrow.